Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
morning.
Good morning, Swami.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamayo Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamayo Mrityorma Amritangamayo Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. The subject of today's talk is not compassion, but rather service. And we have a guest speaker, Prabhrajika Anantaprana. She is from the convent of San Francisco, Vedanta Society of Northern California, San Francisco. We have convent there. In this country, we have two convents, one in Hollywood, another in San Francisco. So she joined the convent in the year 1972 and had her initiation from Swami Prabodhananda Maharaj in 1973 and had monastic vows from Swami Asheshanandaji Maharaj, who was in Portland in the year 1987. He is originally from Kentucky, so came all the way to be a nun in our order. And I thank her very much for accepting our invitation, and also I thank the other nuns who have brought her here. So as I told you, the subject of talk is not compassion but rather service. As you know, this subject is very important from the point of view of Ramakrishna order. Swami Vivekananda actually translated it into action. The original idea was given by Sri Ramakrishna. So I invite I invite Prabhrajika Anantaprana to make her presentation, and there will be little occasion she likes to be questioned, I believe. So you can ask after the end of the talk a few questions to her and she will be happy to answer. Thank you very much. Anantaprana.
When the pandemic started a couple of years ago, we had to move our Sunday school online. Starting this fall, we even have a separate breakout group for the teenagers. And one of the teenage students asked me to send a reading every week. Just not that we would discuss it, but just something extra. So I did, and then when Swami asked me to give this talk, I had to come up with a title in a hurry. And I usually make Virjaprana come up with all my titles for like the youth retreats and the student retreat and the youth forum. But anyway, I had to come up with it quickly. But fortunately, I had just sent out a selection about this topic, so I had it at hand. And it's essentially the theme of the whole Ramakrishna movement. Sri Ramakrishna wanted us all to realize our actual nature, our actual divinity. He took a momentous step of being born as a human being to help us clear our vision and see this truth. And we students of Vedanta are very lucky to have encountered the ideas of Sri Ramakrishna. And now we have to struggle to achieve escape velocity. We have to escape the gravitational pull of our bondages. And for that, we have to use our time well. We have our set times for meditation and possibly worship. And we volunteer at the Vedanta Center and maybe other places. And these times we put in the column spiritual practice times. But what about all the other moments of our days? How do we learn from Swami Yatishwarananda, who said that every moment of his life was spent well? And by that he meant spent in spiritual practice. All these hours between formal meditations have to prepare us for meditation. My understanding of how we realize our real nature, according to all the scriptures and commentaries and teachers, is through concentrated meditation on the ideal. I don't need to tell you that meditation is very hard. What to speak of our set meditation times, it's a rare person who could meditate all day long. For the rest of us, we have to practice controlling our minds. And as Arjuna said to Sri Krishna in the Gita, verily the mind, O Krishna, is restless, turbulent, strong and obstinate. To control it is as hard, it seems to me, as to control the wind. Swami Sarvapriyananda, whose talks many of you are familiar with, characterizes the restless mind as that of a dog with fleas and a brain virus. The poor dog runs into the shade to slow down the biting fleas. And then in the shade, the brain virus starts to gnaw away. So it runs back to the sun, and on, back and forth. It's a very painful illustration, and it's painfully close to home. So what does Sri Krishna reply to Arjuna? He says, without a doubt, the mind is restless and difficult to control, but through practice and renunciation, it may be regulated. So we have to reduce the restlessness of our minds to prepare them for meditation. It doesn't work to doom scroll and then sit for meditation. We have to somehow keep the company of the divine all day long. You know how when people say goodbye after they haven't seen each other for a long time, they say, don't be a stranger. But God can't be a stranger to us every time we sit for meditation. We have to be in the divine presence through some strategy or other. Our day has to be occupied with feeling the divine presence in one way or the other. This continuous effort to feel the divine presence is an effort to control the mind, to regulate the mind. If Sri Krishna advises practice and renunciation, this needs to be one of the practices, this effort to feel the divine presence. And there are many ways of doing this. We repeat our mantra as much as we can, which recalls the divine presence. But some things, when we have to attend to them, the mantra fades away into the background. So to fill up our day with regulating the mind, we have the mantra and meditation. And all the gaps in between, we look to Swami Vivekananda. We are all devotees of Swami Vivekananda. He is, we all agree, the best interpreter of Sri Ramakrishna's message. I think we've all heard many times the story of when Sri Ramakrishna commented on a conversation about the Vaishnava religion. The Vaishnavas are usually associated with the incarnations of Vishnu, like Rama, Krishna, and Sri Chaitanya. In this particular conversation in the Master's room at Dakshineshwara, the discussion was on the teachings of Sri Chaitanya. Sri Ramakrishna was surrounded by his devotees, including Narendra, the future Swami Vivekananda. Sri Ramakrishna summed up the main points of the conversation. Sri Ramakrishna said that Sri Chaitanya wanted the bhaktas to enjoy singing and repeating the names of God. They should serve the devotees of God, and they should show compassion to all living beings. And these aren't just the ideas of a sect. There are good philosophical reasons for all these three. God and his names are the same. So when we repeat the names of God, we are staying in the presence of God by reminding ourselves of that presence. Swami Prabhupada explored this a couple of weeks ago in his talk, Sweet Thy Name. And for the second practice, when it comes to serving God, we also serve the devotees of God. We are still serving God directly, since the devotees and God are also the same. This truth Sri Ramakrishna once experienced in a vision. It says in the introduction to the Gospel, one day, listening to a recitation of the Bhagavata on the veranda of the Radhakanta temple, he fell into a divine mood and saw the enchanting form of Krishna. He perceived the luminous rays issuing from Krishna's lotus feet in the form of a stout rope, which touched first the Bhagavata and then his own chest, connecting all three, God, the scripture, and the devotee. After this vision, he used to say, I came to realize that Bhagavan, Bhakta, and Bhagavata, God, devotee, and scripture are in reality one and the same. In the Master's vision, this showed the identity of all three. So the devotees must be shown great respect and honor, the same as is shown to the Lord and to the holy text. And finally, realizing that God and the creation are the same. Sri Ramakrishna then said that we should show compassion to living beings. But after saying this, Sri Ramakrishna went into samadhi. When he returned to a semi-conscious state, he said, compassion to beings, you fool and insignificant worm crawling on earth. Who are you to show compassion to others? Who are you to show compassion? No, it can't be. Not compassion to others, but rather service of beings, recognizing them to be actual manifestations of God. In the account given in the life of Swamiji, the story continues. After Naren left the room, he said to others, what a wonderful light I have discovered in these words of the Master. How beautifully he has reconciled the ideal of devotion to God with the knowledge of Vedanta, generally interpreted as dry, austere, and incompatible with human sentiments. What a grand, natural, and sweet synthesis. The usual idea is that the practice of the knowledge of Vedanta means one has to utterly withdraw from society and root out all such feelings as love, devotion, and compassion. Cherishing hatred of the world and of fellow beings, thinking them obstacles to spirituality, the aspirant goes astray. This is all what Swamiji said. But from those words of the Master, spoken in an ecstatic mood, I have understood that the ideal of the Vedanta, lived by a recluse, can be practiced even at home and applied to all aspects of daily life. Whatever a person's role in life, let them understand and realize that it is God alone who is manifested as the world and living beings. He is both immanent and transcendent. It is He who has become all the diverse beings, so they will be the objects of our love, respect, and compassion. And yet He is beyond all these. Such a realization of divinity and humanity leaves no room for arrogance. By realizing it, a person can't be jealous of or have pity for any other being. Serving living beings, knowing them to be the manifestations of God, purifies the heart. In a short time, the aspirant who does this realizes that he is a part of God, who is existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute. This is still Swamiji, excuse me. These words of the Master throw an altogether new light on the path of devotion. Real devotion is far off until the aspirant realizes the presence of God in all. By realizing God in and through all beings, and by serving God in them, the devotee acquires real devotion. Those following the paths of work and meditation are also benefited by these words of the Master. The embodied being cannot remain even for a moment without activity. All our activities should be directed to the service of living beings, especially human beings, the manifestations of God on earth. And this will accelerate our progress toward the goal. If it be the will of God, the day will soon come when I shall proclaim this grand truth to the world at large. I shall make it the common property of all, the wise and the fool, the rich and the poor, the Brahmana and the outcast. That's the end of Swamiji's interpretation. So what is the difference between those two teachings, serving the devotees of God, serving the devotees as God, and compassion to living beings? The compassion to living beings refers to the attitude we have while serving. Some of us may think, well, there's nothing that new here. In Christian culture, we are taught to think of everyone as a child of God, and a child of God is certainly a part of God. So of course we would serve them as our sisters and brothers. Just see all the hundreds of Christian service organizations. Vedanta is late to the party. So what is so new or so special about Sri Ramakrishna's statement? And what is so new or so special about Swamiji's insights into Sri Ramakrishna's words? The standard teaching in Christianity, as I understand it, is that I, the individual, may be a part of God, but I am forever a separate part of God, separate from God, and separate from all other created beings. All other living beings are forever separate. Separation means what? It means my individuality is a hard shell. Separation easily leads to comparison. As Swamiji said, I can feel myself better than the child of God I'm serving. I can feel that the other being deserves my pity. The other being, poor creature, bless his heart, as we say in the South, needs my benevolent attention and skills. It's so lucky for that being that I am here to bestow my awesomeness on their behalf. Perhaps someday they too will be as advanced as I am, and then they will appreciate what has been done for them. Well, we can all see the utter danger of this attitude. The sense of ego, of separation, is the root cause of all my pain and affliction. The more this sense of separation is nourished, the farther I am from my real nature. Vedanta philosophy, based on ages of actual experiences of spiritual seekers, insists that I am not separate. This whole world of sense experiences and mental experiences is just a movie being played upon the screen of my actual self, which is unlimited consciousness. Every appearance is made possible by the light of consciousness. Every experience is contained in consciousness. If all sense experiences, all inner thought experiences, all dream experiences, and the experience of deep sleep, all are revealed in my consciousness, then they are all in my consciousness. As Swamiji said, I am not in Alameda. Alameda is in me. My actual self, infinite consciousness, is not affected by the movie of experiences. The movie is impossible without the screen, which is pure consciousness. Life after life, the body and mind have played parts in these movies. After a few million lives, it starts to get old. As Shakespeare had Macbeth say, life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Even Swamiji wrote in the same spirit in his poem, My play is done. Within this poem are the lines, oh, I am sick of this unending force, these shows, they please no more. This ever-running, never-reaching, nor even a distant glimpse of shore. Let nevermore delusive dreams veil off thy face from me. My play is done. O Mother, break my chains and make me free. When we feel this weariness with the tiresome trudge of life getting too strong, our human minds, lighted as they are by divine reality, begin to really question what's going on here. All this running around ends with what? When our suspicions become overwhelming, we really start to seek an answer. For many people, the answers aren't available, so their response is to find more ways to distract themselves from the finalities of life. When you go out in the world, you can see from people's facial expressions how their search has gone. If the search got stuck in cynicism and despair, their face will show it, and they end up falling back on distractions. But those of us here, we're the lucky ones. I remember one time when we first started going to the Saturday evening gospel class in the new temple, it occurred to me when I was sitting there that I was in heaven. We were surrounded by these gentle, intelligent devotees. Where else is heaven? We are heirs to Sri Ramakrishna's and Swamiji's realizations. And California was blessed with the presence of Swami Vivekananda, Swami Turiyananda, Swami Trigunatita, and Swami Abhedananda. California has to be seen as a tirtha, a holy land, with such powerfully holy influences. But returning to Swamiji's message, in the grand truth he proclaimed to the world at large, he stressed that realizing the presence of God in all will benefit not only the devotee, but also the aspirants following the paths of work and meditation. So all the paths are benefited. And since our teachers, beginning with Swamiji, wanted us to be well-rounded, developing all the facets of our personalities, we all struggle to practice our best in work and meditation, along with devotion. So how does this realizing the presence of God in all look in the path of work? In one of Swami Ashokananda's pamphlets, he mentions an Indian saying, "If he appears as a horse, give him oats." This approach to life is very down to earth. Deal with what comes up in a practical way. If your child is hungry, give him lunch. If your daughter is cranky, soothe her. This doesn't seem like spiritual practice, just common sense behavior. So what would make it spiritual practice? What makes it spiritual practice is how we are approaching these incidents. When we see another living being, how are we seeing them? Are we seeing a physical form with a name? Are we seeing a disruption of our own to-do list? Maybe we all know some rare people who never hurry anyone, who always make time for every inquiry, always follow through the best they can. How do they do it? Don't they need 7 or 8 hours of sleep at night? Don't they need some light distraction from the rigors of daily life? Their behavior is how we know they've had some spiritual attainment. This habit of taking care of everyone else's needs is refreshing to them, not draining. Why wouldn't it be draining? What makes taking care of other people and other living things refreshing? What keeps these wonderful people from burnout? These rare souls must be seeing something that I'm not seeing. They must be seeing everyone as a delightful friend, or possibly even a challenging friend, but a friend nevertheless. How can this work? What makes soothing a cranky daughter into a delightful pastime? Something has taken place in that equation. Either the person doing the soothing or the cranky daughter has undergone a transformation, or both. I know when I'm tired, it's hard to be accommodating to every encounter. I will see the other person or task as unusually prickly. We know that our own inner psychological state colors everything around us. There's that poem in Alice in Wonderland where the Duchess is cradling a baby and says, "Speak roughly to your little boy and beat him when he sneezes. He only does it to annoy because he knows it teases." By contrast, when things are going along smoothly, every encounter pleases. And what would make things go along smoothly? More than recognizing that every being is the shining form of Brahman. Every encounter a chance to see this divine light. When other beings are in front of me, I try to worship them according to their needs. A lonely or troubled person needs someone to listen to them. A sick person needs help and medicine. A hungry being needs nourishment. There's the time Sri Ramakrishna was on a tour of one of Mathur's estates at the time of the collection of rents. Mathur was Rani Rasmani's son-in-law, who was first the steward of the Kali temple complex and later Rasmani's sole executor. On this tour, Sri Ramakrishna had to witness the suffering of Mathur's tenants. For 2 years their harvest had failed, and they were in a state of extreme poverty. The master asked Mathur to cancel the rents, give the tenants help, and then give the hungry people a sumptuous feast. Mathur was a businessman and complained. The master said, "You are only the steward of the Divine Mother. They are the Mother's tenants. You must spend the Mother's money. When they are suffering, how can you refuse to help them? You must help them." Mathur finally had to give in, but mainly because Sri Ramakrishna sat down among the poor people and refused to budge. His sympathy for the poor sprang from his perception of God in all created beings. His perception was not that of a humanist or a philanthropist. To him, the service of man was the same as the worship of God. Sri Ramakrishna realized the significance of the great statement of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. "O Lord, you are the woman, you are the man, you are the boy, you are the girl, you are the old tottering on their crutches. You pervade the universe in its multiple forms." The story is told of Sri Ramakrishna once saving a fish who kept swimming around his feet during a flood. People were easily catching the fish that day by picking them up out of the water. Sri Ramakrishna said that this fish had taken refuge in him, and he released it into deep water. His nephew Hridoy complained that they could have eaten that fish. Holy Mother later told this story and said, "The thought of the satisfaction of his own palate never crossed his mind. He was happy in the happiness of the fish. One cannot make another happy unless one gives up one's own selfish enjoyments. The worth of a person's life is to be measured by the extent of joy one has been able to give to others." But what about when I encounter the challenging situation with another person? How do I handle it? Swami Ashokananda said, "If it pleases God to appear before me as an angry man, I learn to soothe him by being gentle and kindly. If he comes to me in the form of a thief, I should call the police." Yes, this is where the struggle really happens. When we have an issue with someone, when someone is angry or insulting, it draws out our own anger and insults. We feel that our substance is being attacked. We usually feel we are the personality, the body and mind, and when that is attacked, we react. But remembering that the divine being is looking through these eyes and speaking these words, we will feel ourselves in the presence of the living God, that this being is actually God. Who else would be such an expert in testing us in such a spot-on way? Who but our inner controller knows all the right buttons to push? And we must remember that we too are the infinite divine being. If we reason that the divine wants to sport in this way, we will instantly feel detachment from our own small self and its atavistic reactions. In fact, we may even begin to feel amusement at the humor of the situation. There's a Tibetan master from the 14th century, Long Chen Pa, who said, "Since everything in life is but an experience, perfect in being what it is, having nothing to do with good or bad, acceptance or rejection, one may well burst out in laughter." We have to remember that we actually need to deal with difficult people. All of us are difficult people to someone or other. Our own preoccupation with our individual needs and fancies has gone on for millions of years because we have lived millions of lives. It's going on still. How to sand it down? It has to finally be completely destroyed, but there's a long road to hoe. We have to deal with betrayals and disappointments and just cantankerousness from people around us. So we'll face our own petty outlook and be forced to expand it. Every time we have to struggle with not reacting, it reminds us. Swamiji said the goal is to manifest the divinity within. Not just remember the divinity within, not just remember the philosophy that confirms it, but we need to manifest that infinite intelligence and love that is our real being. Seeing Holy Mother's impossible sister-in-law, her quarreling brothers, and her intellectually limited niece Raghu should make us so happy that our difficult people are by comparison rather delightful. Even Sri Ramakrishna had to suffer with the abuse and mistreatment of his nephew Hridoy. Hridoy tortured Sri Ramakrishna by constantly trying to monitor what he told his visitors, by taking money from his visitors, and also scolding him and mocking him when Sri Ramakrishna couldn't eat because he was sick. Hridoy ultimately paid for that mischief by being banished from the temple garden for one of his own misdeeds. But for a number of years, he was a really sharp thorn in Sri Ramakrishna's side. Being an incarnation of God is no guarantee of a smooth sailing. I recently read an article in Vedanta, the London magazine, about Swami Saradananda and his capacity to shelter difficult devotees. It was a reminiscence by Swami Bhuteshananda, and this is what Swami Bhuteshananda wrote. Sharat Maharaj's sympathy was not for those alone who were spiritually thirsty, but his heart wept also for those who were burning in the fire of worldly sufferings. So he gave enough time for them. This we realized much later, but at that particular time we failed to understand this. Moreover, he gave shelter to a band of crackpots, and for each of them, what great sympathy and pity did he have. One day he said, "Look, that old woman's insanity seems to have increased. She is not eating at all. Bring some medicine for her." Like that, a number of strange persons used to come to Udbodhan, have their meal there, and behave crazily. Even among them, he noticed and was concerned about that old woman who was not eating. There was a brahmachari who went off his head later. He would keep standing near Maharaj with a huge turban on his head and a stick in his hand. He thought he was the gatekeeper there. Various such abnormal persons used to be there. In the matter of service, he had equal concern for everybody. Some old women had some old ornaments and some cash as their sole property. Where to keep these? Having none in the family to rely on, they deposited these with Sharat Maharaj. He kept these in an iron safe in separate bundles with their names written on them. The day before he had a stroke, he called a monk and said, "Take care of the things that are in this almirah. See to it that everyone gets back their own items without any mistake." Next day, he lost his power of speech as a result of the stroke. But to the last day, he was conscious of the matter. This is still Swami Bhuteshananda. He gave shelter to one and all without judging their fitness. This made some monks of Bellarmine complain, "Maharaj, you have given shelter to these wicked persons." Sharat Maharaj replied, "Yes, my children, I too know that they are unfit for sympathy. But where will they go if I don't give them shelter? They have no other place." Thus, those who had nowhere to go had their place with him. It is not that these persons always behave respectfully even with him. Care they received without any measure, but still they could not become fit recipients of his love. He came only to give, never expecting anything in return from anybody. That's the end of Swami Bhuteshananda's reminiscence. This last part, never expecting anything in return from anybody, demonstrates Swamiji's statement that the ideal of the Vedanta lived by a recluse can be practiced even at home and applied to all aspects of daily life by understanding and realizing that it is God alone who has manifested as the world and living beings. When I serve and worship the person or other living being I'm encountering, I'm not keeping score. Swamiji says, the first test of love is that it knows no bargaining. So long as you see a person love another only to get something from them, you know that it is not love, it is shopkeeping. Wherever there is any question of buying or selling, it is not love. So when a person prays to God, give me this and give me that, it is not love. Once Holy Mother was leaving the house of some devotees who had a small daughter. The little girl told Holy Mother that she loved her very much. Holy Mother said, "How will I know that you love me?" The child said she didn't know how. Mother told her to love all equally. To make this possible, she should not ask anything of anybody, because if one gives her a little and another gives her more, she will love more the one who gives her more. So she will not be able to love all equally. Holy Mother's advice combines both of Sri Krishna's methods of regulating the mind, practice and renunciation. The practice is obvious. We don't ask anything of anybody, and this means we have to have detachment and renunciation. And then from the non-dual standpoint, I am serving my very own self. Any self-sacrifice is sacrifice of the temporary, superficial self. That temporary, superficial self of the body and mind has not given any real happiness or fulfillment so far. That's the popular definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. If I choose the best item for myself, this silly temporary self, I'm obviously not considering that others are divine manifestations. I'm just reinforcing the hard shell of separation. In fact, I'm hardening the shell of separation. Am I not just inviting the Divine Mother to find these weak spots and poke them? She has to help us break our hard shell of false individuality. And there's no benefit to me in underlining the false individuality again and again. Swamiji says, dream but truer dreams, eternal love and service free. And don't seek God, just see God. There's a dazzling reality of freedom and fulfillment behind my silly little selfish preoccupations. When I remind myself constantly that this dazzling reality is already mine, I just need to struggle to see it. This purifies the mind and heart and expands my vision. Swamiji also says, when a man has come to the state when he has no me and mine, when he loves everybody and is ready even to give up his life for an animal without any desire for reward, then his heart will be purified. And when the heart has been purified, into that heart will come the love of God. There's a section, I'll end with this, there's a section in The Mother as I Saw Her that illustrates this sublime realization. Once again, Swami Sardananda and his life at the Udbodhan house is the example. The Udbodhan house was small, and the main worker there, the revered Shart Maharaj, sitting in a small room on the ground floor, attended to his heavy schedule of work in his quiet and unobtrusive way. Along with it, he kept a careful watch on those who came in and went out. Whenever he saw newcomers, he would make inquiries of them in his sweet way and make proper arrangements if the person happened to seek the Holy Mother's darshan or to seek initiation from her. Besides these, so many other persons came for so many other purposes. for he was the helmsman of the Ramakrishna mission, its secretary. Thus, sitting there, he would be so busy, but still, in the midst of it all, he would be writing the volume, Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master. The keen practical insight, the wonderful way of behavior with all, and the great ability for work that this noble soul revealed showed unmistakably how perfect would be the actions of one who tied the knowledge of the Absolute in the corner of one's cloth while working in the world.
Have some questions, please.
Does anybody has questions? Comments?
I can ask one of the things.
Yes.
This has been a very helpful talk and very applicable because there are many examples in my life very recently that, yes, it's just the challenge of the practice. And I guess my question would be, what has helped you not get discouraged? And, you know, the mind goes back to seeing the separate, seeing the individual as the person who's annoying or angry or upset, and what has helped your practice over time not get discouraged when that comes up?
I think basically it's the just remembering the truth of the philosophy that in spite of my constant failure to see everyone as divine, I still know in the back of my mind that that is the reality, that I am the infinite, they are the infinite, and this is just a temporary struggle that we both have to go through. But it's just, it takes a long, long time and it takes a lot of work, so I haven't put in all the work, for sure.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Thank you very much, Anantaprana, for your beautiful, well-prepared and interspersed theme of talk. You know, I can give you one small suggestion regarding how to do work in that spirit. It is not possible to think, as Wayne was saying, or she had suggested, to think that you are divine and he is divine or she is divine, and in that way, even in cranky situation, you do your duty. So there is one way out. That means if you just do in this way, whatever comes to you, without asking, just do it in a spirit of God has sent it. So you just perform it without any what is called discrimination. Don't say I won't do it, but do it whatever has come to you. And in another way, there is that if you do things according to priority. Priority means it is necessary to be done now. It can be done later on. So if you just prioritize what is necessary to be done, even if it is unpleasant, just do it. And in that way, actually, minds become very, what is called, accustomed to doing work. So you'll not be able to see who has given the work, what is the work, and all those things will not disturb you. So you can check. I have read this type of work in some Swamis, but not so important Swamis, probably some Swami of our order who has said this, and his life actually, I have seen that you believe that Swamis must be doing intense spiritual practice. Probably they are very regular in their spiritual practice in the morning, though you cannot have the opportunity of seeing them. I have seen Swamis who actually do not do any meditation. do not go to the shrine also. But such calm and quiet and doing their work throughout the day and under very crucial, difficult circumstances. So they can keep their composed while doing work. So I inquired that how do you do it? So they say that, well, take every work that is coming to you as sent by Sri Ramakrishna or God and do it according to your best ability. That means don't wait or sort out things that we'll do now or do it later on, except according to importance. But do all work that comes to you. So that may be that may give some solution to overcome the selectivity of work or getting annoyed with some work or not to get annoyed to do some work or feel happy to do some work or unhappy to do some work. There will be no choice or there will be no occasion to have that type of feeling. All right, thank you again, Anantaprana, and I thank other nuns who have brought her, and also I thank in general all the devotees. We have started in-person service now, and we hope we shall be able to continue it, and ultimately we shall get back the devotees who used to come very regularly to attend our service. Service means just not listening to the lectures. It is also to enjoy the what is called ambience, as it is called, of this place. If you sit here and listen, and if you sit in the room and in the kitchen and listen to the talk, you will yourself feel there is some difference. So I thank you very much for taking the trouble of coming here and listening to our talk. So next Sunday, Ishwadhananda will speak on Vibhuti and Yoga. Then we shall continue our other classes and discourses. So this Wednesday, though it is not mentioned in our bulletin, that it is mentioned in the bulletin there will be a class, but I think because we are having our annual meeting on Monday, it will be a little bit strenuous for devotees and also to us to have the class on next Wednesday. So I cancel that class of 21st, 22nd, 23rd. Of course, Ishwadhananda will continue. He will give his this class on Friday at 6 p.m. on Zoom only. And I shall, of course, give the discourse on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna as usual on Saturday. And tomorrow we shall have our annual meeting at 7:30. Those who are members, they are cordially and probably most essentially, they should come or be present on Zoom. We have given this opportunity. I hope it will be comfortable, but please join in the meeting. It is very important to have you in the annual meeting. And Gwyn Fellows, she has agreed to give a short talk about how she came to Vedanta. It is a feature that we have introduced to make our annual meeting interesting. So that will be tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. and Swami Prasannatman will come and Swami Tattvamananda, our Central Center, he will not be able to come, but he has sent a video of a short talk that will be, I hope it will be, we shall be able to show that. Om Madhuvatarikayate Madhuksharanti Sindhava Madhirna Santoshadhi Madhunakta Mutoshasi Madhumat Parthivagam Rajaha Madhudaurastuna Pita Madhumana Vanaspatihi Madhumagangastu Surjaha Madhirgavo Bhavantunaha Om Madhu Madhu Madhu. Sweet brother winds and the oceans give forth blessedness. May the earths and plants bring us health and happiness. Sweet unto us be the nights and dawns. May every particle of Mother Earth be charged with blessings. May the heavens shower us with benediction. Sweet unto us with the noble forest trees. Sweet unto us with the shining sun. Sweet unto us with the all-living creation. Om, sweetness, harmony, peace.